आप सभी से निवेदन है, कृपया सेटल डाउन हो जाइए, बैठ जाइए। माननीय मंत्री जी कुछ ही क्षणों में मंच पर होंगे। हमारा ये कार्यक्रम शुरू होने जा रहा है। माननीय गृह राज्य मंत्री श्री किरेन रिजिजू का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है माननीय आपका मंच पर। हार्दिक अभिनंदन करते हैं रिस्पेक्टेड होम सेक्रेटरी श्री राजीव महर्षि का। मंच पर श्री R.K. जैन मेंबर NDMA का भी हार्दिक स्वागत है। मंच पर उपस्थित हैं श्री संजीव कुमार जिंदल, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरी डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट। और मैं मंच पर आमंत्रित करना चाहूँगी प्रोफेसर संतोष कुमार, ऑफिशिएटिंग एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर NITM को भी। After the series of, should we start? After the series of deliberations, exchange of ideas, experiences and views, this 2 days fruitful journey comes to its final destination of the valedictory function. May I now request Shri Sanjeev Kumar Jindal, Joint Secretary, Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, to kindly deliver welcome address and also summarize the 2 days discussions.
Honorable Minister of State for Home Shri Kiren Rijiju ji, Shri Rajiv Maharishi, Union Home Secretary, Shri R.K. Jain, Member NDMA, other members of NDMA, Professor Santosh Kumar, distinguished guests from Central Ministries, States, UTs, local government, academics, private sector, civil society, international organization, media, students, ladies and gentlemen. It's a matter of honor and privilege for me to extend a hearty welcome to all of you to validity function of 2-day second meeting of National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction. We extend a warm welcome to Shri Kiren Rijiju, Union Minister of State for Home, who is also the Vice Chairman of NPDRR and the Asia Champion of DRR. We are thankful to him for kindly consenting to preside over this function and sparing time yesterday also and today he is again with us. We shortly we'll have with us Shri Piyush Goyal, Union Minister of State for Independent Charges of Power, Mines, Coal and New and Renewable Energy for being with us in spite of busy schedule. We also extend a hearty welcome to him. We are truly grateful to Shri Rajiv Maharishi for his kind presence among us and providing us the leadership in our entire endeavor toward disaster risk reduction. We also welcome Shri R.K. Jain and other respected members of NDMA. Friends, after 2 days of extensive deliberation, we have come to the end of this momentous event. This is truly momentous as we are heralding a new era of disaster resilience from earlier era of disaster management. Sir, with your permission, I would like to present some important outcome of the meeting. The detailed summary will be made available to all the delegates on our NPDRR website in a day or so. Sir, we began our event with the inaugural address by Shri Rajnath Singh, Honorable Union Home Minister. He appealed for preventing the preventable deaths with the help of all stakeholders and with the application of scientific tools and technologies. As a part of ongoing application technology in disaster management, Honorable Home Minister launched NDEM, the revised version 3.10, which now can be accessed from mobile apps. He reiterated the age-old proverb that prevention is better than cure and informed that additional investment of 1 rupee in disaster prevention and mitigation could save 10 rupees of future disaster losses. Thus, he set the tone for making India disaster resilient by investing in disaster resiliency. Honorable Home Minister was also kind enough to preside over the ministerial session, which was attended by 4 central ministers, 6 state ministers, and LG of Andaman and Nicobar Island. They gave important suggestions and valuable insight, and some of these are: all the states should be at equal footing for tackling disaster and disaster-related risks so that country as a whole can approach disaster resiliency. DRR should be inclusive to understand and deal with risks faced by women, children, disabled, and other vulnerable sections of society. In order to understand disaster risk, we also need to set up disaster loss database at district, state, and national levels. We can fight cyclones and sea water ingress by increasing plantation of mangroves and protecting them in cyclone-prone areas. Protection of and rescue of animals during disaster may be given equal importance as they are a major source of livelihood for many people. Agriculture research should be tailor-made to assist farmers in adopting innovative agricultural practices. Pooling of resources like disaster rescue equipment may be explored by states center. National Disaster Mitigation Fund should be set up immediately. There should be seamless coordination between center and state and among the states for DRR. For reconstruction, various development schemes need to be utilized under the Flexi Fund scheme of Ministry of Finance. DRR efforts should be taken to the local level. Sir, the plenary session on national perspective on disaster risk reduction, Sendai framework and beyond was chaired by Dr. P.K. Mishra, Additional Principal Secretary to Prime Minister. We welcome Honorable Union Minister for Power, Mines, Coal and Renewable Energy. Thank you, sir, for coming with us. Sir, we are just reading out the summary of discussion of the two-day event we had. The plenary session on national perspective, a perspective on disaster risk reduction, Sendai framework and beyond was chaired by Dr. P.K. Mishra, Additional Principal Secretary to PM. He reiterated the Government of India's commitment to achieve the goals of Sendai framework in a coherent and sustainable manner. Dr. Thirupuga, Joint Secretary NDMA, highlighted different types of risk, how to make people risk sensitive, and risk awareness. He suggested strong political will, sharing of best practices, and implementable action plans that would support the plan for making our country disaster resilient. Shri Kamal Kishore, member NDMA, chaired the session on outcome of pre-events. NITI and NDMA representative detailed about the 14 pre-events organized by them and the outcome of these pre-events. From the discussion, it appeared that following action plan could facilitate our disaster resiliency. States should conduct multi-hazard risk vulnerability analysis. New infrastructure should be funded only if it does not create risk for others and have adequate risk mitigation component. Capacity of private sector should be leveraged for disaster risk reduction. During the technical session 1, Understanding Disaster Risk, chaired by Dr. Shailesh Nayak, ex-Secretary, Ministry of Earth Sciences, the panelist advocated mainstreaming of disaster risk through proper loss assessment before any development activities are taken. They also requested to bring coherence of existing institutions and policies so that there is transparency and clarity about disaster risk. The disaster management plan prepared by city may be given legal sanctity. The technical session 2, disaster risk governance, was chaired by Shri R.K. Jain, member NDMA. We got important suggestions from the panelists and audience for improving disaster risk governance. Some of these are: dedicated disaster management professionals at district level would help in effective disaster risk reduction at local level. There should be clarity of roles amongst different disaster management organizations at district and local levels. Traditional disaster resilient practices should be promoted through policies. Women should play a central role in DRR as they better understand risk and vulnerability. Professionals and tradesmen engaged in the construction of building houses could be regulated to ensure quality of building. Social and disaster risk audit of critical buildings should be carried out to ensure disaster resilience. Sir, the technical session 3 on investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience was chaired by Shri N. Vishwanathan, Deputy Governor RBI. Important suggestions which came are: DRR is an important area which needs investment to minimize losses from disaster. The threats to business continuity and essential services. For instances, the cyber attacks needs to be addressed and institutions should be strengthened against such threats. There should be a funding window for recovery which may also tap the corporate funds. Before creating the mitigation fund, we need to work out clear sources of funding and modalities of its implementation. The role of Panchayat Raj institution in DRR should be institutionalized and should focus on women leadership. Good practices of PRI in disaster risk reduction should be documented and disseminated by NDMA. Sir, the technical session 4, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction, was chaired by Lieutenant General N.C. Marwa, member NDMA. Important suggestions which came are: there is need to strengthen the last mile connectivity by developing simple tools for dissemination of warning. Fire station can directly become the hub for trainings, mock drills and capacity building initiatives for their own workforce as well as volunteers. States with stronger governance had good capacity for implementing recovery phase. There is no established system of identifying recovery needs, estimation of cost of recovery, methodologies for post-disaster need assessment, and its institutionalization. This requires focused attention. Role of NDRF in disaster response and community capacity building was widely appreciated. All states need to set up SDRF and equip them with necessary manpower and resources for quick response. There should be adequate representation of women in response forces. The last technical session, monitoring the implementation of Sendai framework, was chaired by Professor Ramesh, member NITI Aayog. In the session, it was stressed that now all the states have been adequately sensitized on Sendai framework. Time has come to prepare time-bound action plans and to implement them. Data collection and monitoring is an important area which is badly missing as of now. We need to seriously work upon and build a system at local, district, state and national levels across the sectors. In this regard, MHA had already issued broad guidelines and states have to develop their own targets based on local requirements in line with the Sendai framework. To conclude, after 2 days of deliberation by all the stakeholders, we got valuable policy inputs which will help us in making an action plan for making our country disaster resilient. I am confident that these inputs would immensely help us in shaping the roadmap for making the country disaster resilient by 2030. Once again, I welcome all the dignitaries. Thank you, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. ये हमारा सौभाग्य है कि आज इस अवसर पर ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट इंडिपेंडेंट चार्ज फॉर पावर, कोल, न्यू एंड रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी एंड माइंस श्री पीयूष गोयल जी हमारे बीच में उपस्थित हैं. नई दिशा और नई सोच रखने वाले माननीय श्री पीयूष गोयल जी राष्ट्र सेवा के प्रति समर्पित व्यक्तित्व हैं. माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में 2022 तक हर भारतवासी को बिजली मिले, इस संकल्प के प्रति आप पूरी ऊर्जा और पूरी कर्मठता के साथ प्रतिबद्ध हैं. हमारी आपसे विनम्र विनती है माननीय कि कृपया हम सभी का मार्गदर्शन करें.
Thank you very much, Madam. My good friend and the ever-smiling Home Minister, Shri Kiran Rijiju ji, Shri Rajiv Maharshi ji, Home Secretary, Shri R.K. Jain, Member NDMA, Shri Sanjeev Kumar Jindal, Professor Santosh Kumar, officers from all the states from across India, experts in the field of disaster management, disaster operations. I believe several NGOs are also represented in this important two-day conference. Former and current members of the NDMA, ladies and gentlemen. It's really remarkable that we are focusing on a subject which usually comes to attention only after the disaster takes place. In fact, as Benjamin Franklin had said, by failing to prepare, you're actually preparing to fail. The fact that the NDMA is continuously looking and the Home Ministry is continuously looking at what needs to be done to prepare ourselves for any of these problems or any of these, I would call them many times planned, most unexpected, sometimes even targeted attacks on India. I think it's a very ominous kind of time that you are discussing this whilst that ransomware is going on all over the world. But I was just hearing the comments about the wide array of areas that were discussed during the course of this two-day conference, including financial institutions, which really gives one a lot of satisfaction that the government and all of you in the states and different bodies within the country are so much conscious about this very serious subject of preparing ourselves in a sustainable manner so that our development also can be sustainable going forward. In fact, if one looks back into history, and I'm sure many of you must have seen the movie Titanic. Titanic had planned for such a wide array of possible risks to their sailing. And it was a huge vessel. It had all the creme de la creme of then society traveling on the Titanic. But despite all that they had planned for, at that point of time, there was a warning also given to the captain of the ship. But that little bit of arrogance, if one may venture to use that adjective, that nothing can go wrong in my ship, cost the ship so dear, cost so many lives of people. And I think that's one of the first and most preliminary mindset that is required when you are looking at disaster management. That one has to be open to new ideas, one has to be open to potential problems, and never get arrogant or overconfident in what we are doing or what we are planning to do. Of course, if you don't prepare yourself for the worst, if you don't prepare yourself to face untoward situations, then it's going to be even worse. So I'm sure while the engineers of the Titanic must have done a lot of preparation, probably the iceberg was missed out in the preparations that were being done. That there could be icebergs, and that icebergs have so much sharp edges that it can actually cut through the huge steel plates of the big ship. Therefore, very often it's always the lack of preparedness or the lack of deep understanding of potential disasters that land us into this serious risk of which often causes lives, which causes loss of property. In fact, when we talk of sustainable development, I think even disasters like soil quality, for that matter, soil management, or the, I think, serious issue in the days to come of water management. Today, of course, the nation is finally come to terms that we have to solve the cleanliness problem of the nation. Otherwise, garbage and its attendant impact on health, on pollution, was itself a huge disaster waiting to, or I would say, attack the country much worse than probably many of our conventional disasters could. And in the same breath, if I may venture to suggest, every form of disaster always gives you some kind of warning signals. Very rarely are disasters so absolutely unimaginable and unheard of that nothing could be done about it. I'm sure if we trace the history of disasters that have occurred in the world, you will always find some warning signal. It could be well in advance, it could be very close to the event, but there's always a warning signal. And it is our preparedness to have an open mind and to understand those signals, to search for those signals, that will determine our success in handling disasters, mitigating disasters. In fact, climate change is one issue which the world is grappling with today. It's literally a disaster waiting at our doorsteps, waiting to affect all of humanity. And it is a matter of great happiness that 193 countries could come together on one platform, could agree without a single disagreement. Very rarely are such international agreements finalized with 193 countries agreeing on every aspect of the climate change Paris Agreement. And it's a matter of great satisfaction that Prime Minister Modi's role in the Paris negotiations and finalizing the Paris Agreement has been hailed by one and all across the world. There's unanimity that it was India's leadership role that finally settled the Paris Agreement in December of 2015. And I think it's a great credit to India and the leadership of India that despite being a developing country, despite being so much away from the ability to finance large amounts of risk mitigation costs associated with fighting climate change, despite the fact that India in the first place was never responsible for this problem, supporting 17% of world population. After all, we have only contributed to 2.5% of the greenhouse gases up there. Despite that, Prime Minister Modi's approach was one of collective wisdom, one of collective action, one of shared responsibility. That this is a challenge that the world, that the planet is facing, and we will all be a part of this challenge. We will all work collectively as responsible global citizens to make sure that we don't let the temperature go beyond 2 degrees by 2100. While of course we are still a long way away from achieving that goal, while there are signals coming from some very important countries that they may not participate in this global effort, but India remains steadfast in working to mitigate this disaster waiting to happen. And which is what the strength of today's leadership is, which is what the strength of the people of India is, that they are willing to understand what is good for humanity, what is not good for humanity, and we are willing to proactively act to ensure that we can mitigate such disasters in the making. In fact, there was talk about the UN Sendai framework, which is also a 15-year voluntary non-binding agreement. But if all the countries collectively recognize that it's our responsibility, that it's the state's primary role, even though it may not be a responsibility, but it's the responsibility of all of us collectively. One need not argue whether it is central government, state government, local body. When all of us conspire to work together, that is the only way we will be able to truly mitigate the risks of disaster going forward. And private sector, public sector, as they say, Jan Bhagidari, the involvement of the people will be the defining feature of any success towards disaster mitigation. And I can assure you that as I was reading in the outcome of your 2-day deliberation, the Honorable Home Minister at the very beginning mentioned that 1 rupee well spent to address the possible disaster towards preventive measures is better than 10 rupees spent after the disaster, when we may have already lost precious lives, precious property, and then that cost would really not only be 10 times or sometimes even more, but not give you the desired results. There are different estimates of how disasters derail economies or derail plans and progress that many countries have been achieving. Different estimates range from 260 billion US dollars annually to 414 billion dollars annually. Now that's a huge amount of money. And one can assess that if all of us were to invest wisely a little more money than what we are spending today, but do it well, do it smart, then we could actually be potentially saving billions of dollars of losses, not to speak about the lives that we may save. Natural disasters like storms, floods, hurricanes, typhoons, all of these also in some form relate to climate change. There are many studies which tend to bring in a correlation to global warming and the increasing incidence of these disasters, natural disasters. In fact, if you ask me, disasters and poverty also are very closely linked. After all, should a hurricane affect a coastal area, it may take along with it the livelihood of so many people. It may destroy homes. It may destroy businesses. And therefore, when we are talking of a society which is free of poverty, society where every man lives a life of self-respect, self-reliance, independence, I think our own effort towards disaster mitigation also has a role to play when we talk of poverty alleviation. There is a close linkage between disasters, development, and poverty. And I'm sure if we want to make serious progress in eliminating malnutrition, extreme poverty, reversing disasters or addressing these challenges will actually help to do it much faster. I'll give you a small example. We have now built up very robust tracking mechanism of these hurricanes or typhoons, which often come through the sea for the electricity sector. Other day I was visiting POSOCO, where we manage the entire national transmission grid, and they actually showed me how they were tracking a hurricane that came about a year and a half ago. Which one was it, in Andhra Pradesh? The Andhra hurricane that, Hudhud. They actually showed me on their computer screens how for several hours they were tracking the Hudhud coming in and progressing towards the shores of Andhra Pradesh, how they decided, at what point of time they decided to switch off the electricity connection on the grid, let the hurricane come in, pass, and because of that sensible handling of the potential disaster and its impact on the electricity grid, hundreds of lives were saved, because you know electrocution and fires and all of that automatically come in if the transmission were to be on while the hurricane attacked. And save and except some poles or some wires what got damaged, which could quickly be rectified, by and large the electrical infrastructure remained intact. And I think in less than 1 week, the central government and state government together could actually put up the whole electrical infrastructure back in normal shape. So addressing these risks, these problems in advance can really have a huge impact to reduce the losses. I'm delighted that ISRO has been doing a lot of good work in this about disaster warnings. The South Asia satellite, which has just been launched, will also help us in assessing or having advanced warning systems for any potential disasters going forward. I'm sure the satellite launched in 2016, the INSAT-3 DRR, satellite for disaster management applications, must also be playing a role in helping the authorities assess what is happening, what could potentially happen. But all in all, I must compliment each one of you for the role that you are doing, for the work that you are doing. We have challenges in the nation. Urbanization is going to be one challenge where disasters will have a cause and effect story. Rapid urbanization, unplanned urbanization often is the cause of a disaster. But planned urbanization, smart cities can also have the advantage of mitigating disasters. So the choice is before all of us. I come from Mumbai. We saw what happened in the infamous floods of 26th of July. I think it was 2007 or 8, when the entire city was paralyzed for a very long time due to unimaginable rains. We saw a similar thing in Chennai, where floods caused havoc about a year and a half ago. All of these things have a man-made element. After all, the Mumbai-Mithi River, which at one point of time would have been a natural outlet for the huge amount of water or rain that we witnessed for 48 hours, is otherwise clogged with silt and all sorts of impurities and could not handle the heavy rains and the heavy flooding. So I think the National Disaster Management Plan that was launched by the Honorable PM in 2016, which covers all phases of disaster management: prevention, mitigation, response, and then finally recovery, is a holistic vision in this sector. I'm sure all of you in your areas of work in your cities and states will work actively for the best results out of this National Disaster Management Plan. And as they say, gaining knowledge is the first step to wisdom. Sharing it is the first step to humanity. We all have knowledge in our different spheres about what disasters